Good evening, YouTube. Um, I was just watching Matt Walsh. He's fucking talking about aliens again. He's always talking about aliens. This guy. Um, he's got a little fetish with them. He talks about Christianity as well. It makes me so angry. You're not a Christian, Matt. Obviously, you don't believe the Bible. You believe that the Bible has to be bent and interpreted in order to match up with what man tells you. And then you go on about UFOs and you say, oh, there's video evidence. Well, I can make videos of anything that you fucking want to see. Whatever. That's not evidence. Right? The long and short of it is, I can disprove that the earth is a ball, thereby disproving space, therefore abolishing your whole stupid argument that there's aliens. You can't have the aliens. Now, that being said, it's totally biblical and scriptural to have demons and other what we would think alien life or whatever, alien to us, because there's 7 layers below us, and it would take a man 300 years to walk from one side of the earth to the other, and it would take a man 300 years to walk from earth straight up to heaven, and it would take a man 300 years to walk from earth straight down to the next level, and there's 7 levels up, 7 levels down, and earth's in the middle, and heaven's at the top and hell's at the bottom. No room for your outer space shit. See, there's fallen angels, and they're tricksters in nature, and their whole goal for the last 7,000 years has been to trick mankind. Very intelligent angels. Actually, the most intelligent angel, who was also the most powerful, the most beautiful, the most... Like Satan was the leader of the angels. So what the fuck do you think he's been doing for 7,000 years? God said he'd protect the Bible and he'd protect the Word. He didn't say that he would protect it in one book or in one place. He said the scriptures would all be protected. But he also said that we'd die for a lack of knowledge in the latter days right now. And it's because, like, all these preachers that you talk to, they all went to seminary school and learned what to teach you and what not to teach you. And they get pretty insulted when you talk about the things that they're taught not to teach you. They're all like, oh, you're not supposed to fucking know that or whatever. So you have to make a choice, Matt Walsh. Are you a Christian, or are you a science person? Right? And then that was his next argument. Look at all these doctors and specialists that are saying that. Excuse me? Coming from Matt Walsh? He's like, oh, this guy has tenure at some university. So he's no joke. You fight those people every fucking day. You fight them in every school, all through America, especially in the universities, especially the ones with Tinder and all that shit, man. Those people are the enemy. What side of the battle are you fucking on? Because it seems it's the other side. And that's fine, but don't claim to be on our side. Don't talk about Christianity to me as you deny the fucking Bible. Who are you? So, I'm sure that you've talked about a lot of other things that the Bible tells you not to, like, and so do all these people in the seminary schools. They'll mow over the fact that there's a false Jew talked about in the Bible, and that false Jew is actually in Israel right now, and that's why prophecy is not being fulfilled. Now, when you confront those preachers about that, fuck, I'm pretty, aren't I? Wow. When you confront those preachers about that, they just get angry, most of them. And they'll deny that false Jew stuff. And actually, I had one guy try to tell me that they're the real Jews, and that things are coming back in Israel. Look at the grass is growing, and there's gardens, and it's all green there and everything. And there's war all around. And actually, the Israelites that are there, the so-called Israelites, the Edomites, are talking about abandoning the government or whatever because of all the turmoil and the war and shit that's going on all around them. But the grass is green. Well, the grass is green in LA, right in the middle of the desert. We can make grass grow. You know that. That's pretty easy. But we can't make peace. That's something that is just out of our control, and especially out of their control. Do you see it? I'm sure you don't. These are the three things that you should ask your church about in order to know if you're going to be one of the 2/3 that's going to fall away from Christianity in the end times when the Antichrist is introduced. And then we got 3 years of tribulation to go through. So here's the 3 questions. Does your church, what do they think about those Jews? Do they think that the Edomites are extinct? Do they think that the Edomites are still here? Do they think there's a false Jew? Do they think that there's a real Jew? Do they think the lost 10 tribes are just gone, or do they think they're somewheres? Because I know where they are. How old is the earth? Do you think it's 7,000 like the Bible says, and like carbon dating says, and like the floods say, and like the all the evidence around the earth? Like look at Grand Canyon. It doesn't have a delta. That's evidence that it was formed quickly. There's rivers flowing into the Grand Canyon at greater than 90-degree angles. That means that it was formed recently, or else those rivers would be at acute angles in order to flow naturally. But they're flowing this way, and then they fucking turn and flow this way. That's not natural. That's not natural flow. And actually, the top altitude of the Colorado River isn't as high as the top of the Grand Canyon. So it never could have cut through there unless you filled in Lake Utopi and Grand Lake, which actually covers 3 states, and it changes the levels of the ocean so that people, the 10 lost tribes, could have actually walked right through China, or not China, through Japan, and then through Northern Europe, came into Alaska, migrated right down, and got into North America and populated this continent and became what we call Native Americans or whatever. The other tribes were pushed south, and they eventually ended up in a place called Negro Land. I know that's a horrible place. Like, the name is thought of as being so bad, but it's just the name of a place. It's actually still there. And they were scooped up from there, put into ships, and brought to Second Egypt and put into slavery for 400 years. That 400 years should be up in 2030 by my calculations of the immigrations and what happened. And I could tell you all the history and all that stuff, but I could go on forever. But yeah, the first slaves that actually came, Hebrew slaves that came to America were actually before that. It was 2019. That's why we had the big push at 2020 and stuff, and all this shit happened. But they all were indentured servants, which is biblical, and became landowners and shit. There was no foul play. It wasn't until 2030 a slave was sent to this farm, and then in 2037 or 1637 he ran away from the farm. But he should have been, his indentureship was over, so he shouldn't have had to run away. And it was because it was abusive as hell, and then they were trying to keep him there. Anyway, he ran away. They tracked him down, brought him back to that farm, and brought him to court, and then brought him back to that farm and sentenced him to serve his entire life as a slave. And that was the first slave, and that was actually in 2040. So we could have all the way to 2040 before the Hebrews wake up and realize what's going on. But they're already starting to wake up. So I think it's 2030 because that was when that slave went to that farm and started being abused and treated shitty. And that was the end of his free life. And from that point on, it was struggles for him. So I think that will be the start point myself. You know, it could be 2037 because that was when he was actually betrayed as his indentureship was over and they tried to keep him, but then he ran away. And then it could be 2040 because that's when he was caught and resentenced to go back to that same farm. And then his life was really bad. And from that point on, no Hebrews had, the rights were just stripped right away from them. And that was all after Andrew Jackson and stuff. And the Rothschilds got back in and they hated the Hebrews even more than they hated them from before, right? And it's the Edomites. So of course they did. They hated them from way back in the womb of Rachel, Isaac's wife or whatever. And, or is it Sarah? No, it was Rachel. And so way back then in the womb, they were fighting with each other. And then it says that Jacob was winning to be birthed first. He was going to be the older child. And then Esau grabbed his mother's throat or grabbed something. And he said he was, to kill her. So Jacob let him go first. But he came out with his hand on the heel of Jacob. He had him right by them. That's why they called him Jacob, which means heel grabber. Anyway, way off topic. Matt Walsh. I'm showing you that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Christianity and shit. And Hebrewism and all those books. I've read them all a few times for the most part. And then watched sermons and studied that shit like crazy. And I'm here to tell you, there's no UFOs. Don't get me wrong. There's demonic shit going on in this world. And those demons are, they're using CERN to blast holes in the earth and try to open up portals. And God traps some of these more powerful angels away down in the earth, and he traps some of them into the stars and the firmament. and they've been blasting and trying, like they tried to nuke them out of the sky. They tried doing all kinds of shit. Look up Operation Fishbowl. They were trying to get those angels free, and now they're using CERN and they're trying to blast holes in the dimensions in order to open portals for the passage of these different demons, and it's said that the realm just above us is a constant war. There's just a big war going on all the time there. And then it's the realm above that it starts to get heavenly. And then the realm below us is turmoil as well. It's not, I don't think it's described quite as like big war going on. But it's unfriendly, let's say. More unfriendly. Like the hills have eyes, kind of unfriendly. So that saying unfriendly is maybe a weaker word than what should be used in there. Which gets me to your boss, I guess. I'm sorry to say, to Ben. I love Ben. I think that he's a great guy. He's really smart and knows his shit. But he's an Edomite by his blood. His blood right. He's an Edomite. He's not a Hebrew. He's Jewish. When in the Maccabees, when Judah takes over Edom, and he tells them you have to either convert or move or die. And a whole whack of them all convert and circumcise themselves and get under the laws. And from that day forward, those Edomites were no different from Hebrews. So the sons of Abraham and Isaac, right? They're Edom. I mean, they're Jacob's twin brother. So it's like they're still Shemaic from Shem and from Abraham and from Isaac. So no different from Hebrews from that day forward. But they deny Christ. And that's where they fall off and become more heathenistic. And they never let go of that hatred. See that hatred that I was just talking about. It keeps going forward. Jacob and Esau, and I'm sure there's a bit of that in the Bible. You get like a real brief introduction to that argument for you biblical people, and then but there's so much more to it under there to dig into. It's amazing stories. And anyways, and then he's sent away, and he has his 12 kids, and he comes back, and then he goes again, and they all end up in Israel, and with Joseph. And then Jacob dies, and Joseph gets permission from the Pharaoh to take his father home and bury him in the cave Machpelah. And so they take him home, and the Edomites cut them off at the cave and say it's ours, and it's actually Esau himself. And he says, no, this is our cave, my cave, whatever. And there's no such documentation about me selling anything, any of my birthright, blah, blah, whatever. And then, so Joseph sends Naphtali back to Egypt to get the paperwork. And Esau, he gets sight of it. He gets wind of what's going on. And so he picks a big fight, and it ends up that there's a big fight, like an actual war ensues between them. And then there's a deaf kid, one of Jacob's grandchildren or whatever, And he says, "What the hell's going on?" And somebody tells him in sign language, "What, that they're not letting us in. They're not going to let us bury your grandfather here." And he freaks right out, loses his shit, and he goes and he cuts Esau's head right off, and then shit goes right off. Then, but they lose leadership, so the chaos ensues in that army, and they're easily defeated. Well, not easily, because a couple of them. Oh shit! I should know this guy's name, and I just thought of it, and then I was like, "Oh fuck yeah, that's what it is," in my mind as I was talking, and now I forgot it just that quick. Anyways, one of the sons, the grandson of Esau, he's this great warrior. I'll think of his name here soon, and he's and him and his battalion of fighters, Joseph, just can't stop them. So eventually because everybody else kind of abandons and they lose their leadership, and all hell kind of breaks loose in their ranks, he's able to capture them, and they tie him up and take him right back to Egypt, put him in prison, because he is going off, especially now that his granddaddy was just killed in front of him, right? He's pissed. And it's by these fucking Jews that he hates. He hates the Hebrews. And so now he hates them even more. And then they throw him in prison. So now he hates them even more. And then he has to escape from prison and stuff. And he actually becomes the first king of Rome. And I did that conversation in a different video, but it might have been the one that fucked up and didn't tape for me. Anyway. Fascinating story. But the hatred is rooted, and it's way from back there, and it grew way back there, and it manifested, and it is just still to this day. You can follow it through the bloodline, slavery and all that shit, and whipping them and saying, what's your name and all that, stealing their fucking heritage from them, totally erasing, breaking up the families, doing all this shit, all because of that hatred. Coming back over here, finding them, tracking them down over here, Christopher Columbus, just slaughtering them, doing all kinds of crazy fucking shit, trying to put them in slavery, and it didn't work out because they were freer, but they were still heathenistic. So that was good, but they needed to steal that culture away too, because there was a lot, when you look into the native culture and stuff, there was still a lot of Hebrewism mixed in there, right? So it was still like bleeding in, and so they had to fucking destroy that. And so they had to wipe out all the grandparents. And that's why they'd go in and they'd kill entire fucking tribes, certain ones. It's because those ones were the most Hebrew. They were the ones that kept the culture the most. So they had to be fucking deleted. And then once you take away one generation's knowledge, that's it. You've got it. You just got to keep it from them now. Replace it with something. Right? But it's all out there. You can still go find it. You don't have to find it from me. You can go find it the same way I did, because they need for their own kids to know the truth. And they're actually very satanic, and right in